you you should come visit us. We have a great summer program. So if Ismail wants to come and chill with us, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Okay, so hoping first and foremost, my wonderful sisters are doing well, inshallah. And speaking of wonderful sisters and wonderful women, today, inshallah, we will be talking about Khadija, radiallahu anha, the wife of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam. And a lot of times when we talk about Khadija, when we hear about Khadija, we hear about her in a very Muhammad-centric kind of way. It all revolves around the life of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam, which makes sense, right? Being one of the wives of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam, and perhaps one of the most famous, it makes sense that we hear about her in that context most of the time. But why is Khadija such an important figure? To understand that, we have to understand who Khadija was before she was even the wife of the Prophet ﷺ. So let's start with, first of all, the titles of Khadija radiallahu anha. And her full name is Khadija bint Khuwaylid, Khadija, the daughter of Khuwaylid. She was one of the noble women of Quraysh. And one of her titles was the Princess of Quraysh, the Pure One. She had a lot of titles, alhamdulillah. So Khadija was married before the Prophet ﷺ, not once but twice. Both of her husbands died at some point. And Khadija was well known in history to us and at the time as well for being an amazing businesswoman. Now, how did Khadija get to be the businesswoman that she is? Her father was a well-known trader. And after he passed, she took over his business and she expanded her trade routes through Arabia, through Yemen, through Shem, which is Syria, Lebanon, Palestine. And both these areas were well known for trade. And even, up until now, the areas of Bilad Shem, which is Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, even if you know like a lot of Yemenis in your area, or if you know Syrian people, Palestinian people, Lebanese people, mashallah, they're all business people, right? So you see, all these great restaurants, businesses, trade, and, historically, there were always amazing traders, right? But it was very, very dangerous at the time for anybody to try to take these routes from Arabia, right? The Arabian Peninsula, which is currently Saudi Arabia, to, south to Yemen or north to the Mediterranean area, right? So what Khadija did was genius, right? So she was like the premier HR person of her time, like the human resources person, and case studies can be made about her. So what she did was she really went out, like she set out to be this headhunter type of person, and she looked for characteristics in people that she wanted leading her business. So she looked for people who were trustworthy, people who were strong both mentally and physically, people who had experience in trade. And so she would find these people and she would send them out on these caravans, which were very difficult for, men to even take at the time, these trips. And so she would, I'm sorry, can you guys hear me? I feel like I'm glitching.
I can hear you clearly.
Jazakallahu khairan. I have to say, by the way, it's very challenging for me to be talking and not seeing people. So if you guys see me like a little, I'm like trying to, get my bearings here.
No worries. You're doing great, mashallah.
Jazakallahu khairan. So it was very difficult for men, let alone a woman, to take these like really hard journeys, right? So one of the people that she found to lead her caravans was this man by the name of Muhammad. And he was well known to his people of Quraysh as being a very trustworthy person, very strong. And he had experience in caravans because he used to take caravans with his uncle to the areas of Syria and the areas of Yemen. So time after time, this man that she chose to lead her caravan, because, he had this great reputation, mashallah, she would send him. So her first trip, she sent him on the area that is now Greater Syria, right? And when he came back, she learned two things about him. Number one, her servant, Maisara, was talking about how amazing this person's character was. But the other thing is she had gained record profits, right? So then she sent him to Yemen. And he came back with the same thing, great character, amazing dealings, and record profits. But the thing she kept on hearing about over and over again was, how great this person's character was. So she started kind of, paying attention to who this person was. Now, bear in mind that I told you that Khadija was married not once, but twice. So this woman was already an expert at the time in, choosing people and, choosing spouses and being with spouses, right? At the same time, she was also dealing with men on a regular basis, being a woman in trade and being a wealthy woman in trade. So what do you guys think happened then? Well, being a wealthy woman in trade, obviously, what happens when there's a wealthy woman in the community? What do people want, right? People become very attracted to her and they want to ask for her hand in marriage. And a lot of people, a lot of these people were strong and powerful and they wanted to add their power and their might and their wealth to her power and her wealth and her might, right? And, create this like empire of wealth, which would be a very easy thing for her to do. Marry a wealthy person, he leads her business, and then she could just sit back and retire and relax. But that's not what Khadija did. What did Khadija do? She started recognizing the character of this wonderful man, and she spoke to her friend. Her name was Nufaisa bint Umayyah, and she told her that she was interested in this man. Nufaisa went to the Prophet, and she said, "What's your deal? Do you want to get married?" And he said, "Who's interested?" And she said, "Khadija." He said, "How can I marry Khadija? This woman is wealthy. This woman has like a great reputation. This woman has power." And she said, "Leave it to me. Are you interested?" And he said, "I'm interested." So Nufaisa actually was the go-between between the Prophet ﷺ and Khadija, and these two got married. Now, why is this such an important point? Well, this is an important point because if we're comparing the way that the Prophet ﷺ married Khadija to the way that people get married now, we can point out two big things. Number one, remember, and I'm going to say this a couple times again, Khadija was married and widowed not once, but twice, right? And community these days, unfortunately, in the Muslim community and a lot of other communities, but especially in Muslim communities, if a woman is married or divorced, she has a hard time getting married because people want to seek a woman who's generally not married or hasn't been married before. But the Prophet ﷺ had no problem marrying Khadija, even though she had been married twice. The other thing is he didn't go to her. She sent somebody to him, right? And this was before Islam. Somebody could argue, this was before Islam. And so, things were done differently then. But we're talking about a time that people still buried their female babies alive. So it's not like it was a time of women's liberation. It's not like it was a time where women had all these rights and all these, all the ability to do these things. Khadija was actually a unique woman of her time, right? And even after Islam, when people did things before Islam, that Islam came later to say you shouldn't do this or condemn this, Khadija was never condemned for having sent somebody to ask for the Prophet's hand on her behalf. So these are two very, very important things to remember about Khadija, right? The other thing that we know Khadija is that she was older than the Prophet ﷺ. Now, you'll find a lot of debate about that. So the traditional story that we know is that she was about 15 years older. The Prophet ﷺ, when they got married, was 25. And so the more prevalent saying is that she was 40. There is dispute about that, especially if you talk to some scholars or you go to some places in Saudi Arabia right now, you'll see like some museums and things like that. They dispute the fact that she was 40 because she went on to have several children with the Prophet ﷺ, and 40 is a little old to have that many children, right? But even if that were the case, we still know factually that she was at least 5 years older than him. So that's point number 3, that Khadija was unique in the sense that, again, number 1, she was married previously. Number 2, she sent somebody to ask for the Prophet. She chose who she wanted to choose based on the characteristics of this man, because she knew that the characteristics of a spouse makes or breaks a marriage, a business, a whole life, right? And number 3, she was older than him. So all these things are very important points because they were unique to Khadija at the time when women, again, did not have these liberties, did not have these freedoms. But they're very relevant to us today at a time when women are condemned or gain reputations unjustly because they are one of these 3 things. Either, for example, they've been married and widowed or divorced. Sometimes things don't work out. Or number 2, they are interested in somebody and they initiate a conversation or send somebody to initiate a conversation, right? And number 3, a woman might be older than somebody she's interested in. And these days, what do they call her, right? They call her a cougar. They call a woman who is interested in a man younger than her a cougar. But realistically, this was the practice of the Prophet ﷺ with his first wife. And not only that, the Prophet ﷺ was married to her for 25 years monogamously. So he did not marry at a time that polygamy was a thing, even before Islam, right? Islam came and defined marriage as not more than 4 wives, whereas at the time you could marry as many wives as you could afford. The Prophet ﷺ was married to this one woman for 25 years. Okay, so that's Khadija the woman. What about Khadija the wife? So now they're married, right? They're married for 25 years. They have children. They have Al-Qasim, which, the Prophet ﷺ had that title, that kunya, right? Ab Al-Qasim. Al-Qasim was his and Khadija's son. They went on to have daughters as well. But what about their relationship? Well, when we talk about the marriages of the Prophet ﷺ, what do we hear about the most? The wife that we hear about the most is Aisha. And we think of Aisha as, the big love of the Prophet ﷺ's life, right? But realistically, the big love of the Prophet ﷺ's life was Khadija radiallahu anha, right? Even Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, was jealous of Khadija, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, like we said, was monogamous for 25 years. 15 years into this marriage, he received the prophethood, right? The message of prophethood. She was the mother of his only living children. And fun fact, one of those children is promised Jannah. I wish I can interact with you guys more, but does anybody know which of his children was promised Jannah? I'll wait for a second, see if anybody types it.
Assalamu alaikum, Fatima.
Wa alaikum assalam. Yes. So Fatima was his daughter who was promised Jannah, right? So there are 4 women, right? The 4 best women of mankind. And one of them is Fatima, may Allah be pleased with her. Does anybody know the other 3? Asya, yep. Asya, wife of Pharaoh. Maryam, right? Mother of Isa alayhi salam. And then we said Fatima. And who's the 4th? Khadija radiallahu anha, exactly. So Aisha, as much as she has a status in Islam and a status in the life of the Prophet and a status in the seerah, because again, Aisha is a scholar, right? She's a scholar of hadith. She taught men, a lot of what we know from the life of the Prophet ﷺ comes from her, right? But Khadija is one of the 4 best women ever created, right? And her daughter is one of the 4 best women ever created. And one of the women who, the woman who was actually promised Jannah. So how amazing is this woman that she's promised Jannah? Her daughter is promised Jannah. And she gets to be the wife of the most perfect of mankind, right? How amazing was this woman that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose her? Well, let's think about it for a second. There is a book by an imam called Imam Hassan al-Banna, and he summarizes from different sources and from the Sunnah and from other scholars, 10 characteristics that a Muslim should have, right? These are the 10 characteristics that a Muslim should always strive to be. So I'm going to tell you guys these 10 characteristics, and let's think together if Khadija meets these characteristics, okay? So number 3, I'm going to start at number 3, and I'll tell you in a second why. Number 3 is mujahidan li nafsih, that a person strives or works hard for themselves, actually works hard to create a path for themselves. Did Khadija do this? I'm waiting for responses in the chats. Yes, Khadija did this by becoming a self-sufficient woman who ran her own business, expanded her business. Actually, I like that idea. How about if you guys agree with what I'm about to say, give me thumbs ups. How about that? Okay. So she strove for herself by growing her father's business to unprecedented levels, charting courses that no woman before her had charted in that time, by putting men in charge of her business, right? And then leading those men and making sure, again, any person that you put in charge of a business and you're not overseeing that business properly, what's going to happen? People can skim off the top, people can cheat you, people can underreport the earnings, correct? People can be harsh, people can be nasty. How's it going to get back to them? There's no internet at the time. There's no, a social media, there's no phone, there's no telegraphs. All they had was letters that took, months and months and months to get somewhere. So people could just really like rip her off and get away with it, and she wouldn't know till later. And unless this woman was a capable woman, right? Number 4, harisan ala waqtih, a person who is well organized in their time. Do we think that Khadija was well organized in her time? All right. So yes, because how can a person be a business person if they're not organized in their time? I don't know how many of you guys here run businesses, but I'm sure that some of you do. And I'm sure some of you work in businesses, and I'm sure some of you work very professional jobs. And you know that if you are not organized in your time, you cannot be successful. One of the biggest concepts in organizational management is time management. And it's one of the biggest things that you can get paid. If you're good at time management, right, you can get paid to actually go and train people how to better organize their times, right? People became big speakers and big, self-help people and business consultants because they are well organized in their time and they can teach people time management. منظما في شؤونه, that she or the person, the Muslim, is organized in the way that they do things. We already said that has to be the case if she's running a strong business. How about نافعا لغيره, somebody who is helpful to others? Well, we didn't talk about this yet, but I could tell you that Khadija was very helpful to others. And one of the stories that we know about her is that she would pay off marriage dowries for women who cannot afford to pay it. Okay. So when women wanted to get married, and that was a big thing in the time of, Quraysh, or in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, that, and it's still a big thing in many parts of the world, that a woman is only valuable in as much as she can get into a good marriage or get married to begin with. And again, remember at the time that, girls were buried alive because they were a financial burden, or they might bring shame to the family or to the tribe, right? So what she would do is, when she would find poor women in Quraysh, she would pay off their dowries so that these women can get married and not have to deal with a life where they were considered a burden to their families, sold off to another tribe, or anything like that. So was Khadija in and of herself, and again, we're talking still about Khadija before Islam. We have not even touched Khadija after she became Muslim. Was Khadija beneficial to others? Khadija was beneficial to others, right? Qawiyul jism. Well, think about it. Even before Khadija became Muslim, right? We know 2 very important stories about her. Number 1, she bore children at an age that is considered older, even if she were 30 years old when she started bearing children for the Prophet ﷺ, right? Even now, do you guys know what they call a pregnancy over like 30 years old? I'm sure somebody here works in the health field.
A geriatric pregnancy?
Yes, it's called a geriatric. It's so insulting. It's called a geriatric pregnancy. So can you imagine this woman having at least 4 geriatric pregnancies? Hold on, I'm spelling it. Right? So can you imagine, right, having multiple kids? Not just that. Let me ask you sisters something. By show of hands, who has been to Hajj or Umrah and has actually gone to Jabal al-Nur? Alejandra, I know you have. Yes. So number 6 was nafi'an li ghayri, which means beneficial to others. Right? So the next one is qawiyul jism. Number 7 was strong of body. Qawiyul jism, right? So we said, yes, she was definitely strong in body because she was bearing children, right? These geriatric pregnancies. But what else? If you have been to Mecca and you have been to Jabal al-Nur, that climb, even with the way that they made this slope and the way that they widen the roads and the rest stops all the way up to Ghar Hira, which is the cave where the Prophet ﷺ received revelation, that is a brutal, brutal climb. I tried, my first time I tried was actually when I was with my dear sister Alejandra and a bunch of my wonderful sisters during our Umrah January of 2023. And I got halfway and I couldn't go anymore. I couldn't climb anymore. And then this year I went on a youth Umrah, and I'm not a youth anybody. And, mashallah, the youth that I was with, they're like, you're going to make it to the top. And they pushed and they prodded me to the top. And all I kept on thinking was, at 45 years old, I can't even make it halfway up this mountain without going, I was wheezing the whole way up, right? And I'm like, just shoot me now. I don't want to go. I'm fine. I'm fine. I made it halfway up. And all I kept on thinking was this amazing woman, Khadija, would climb up this mountain, not just by herself, but with food, with like quantities of food to take to the Prophet ﷺ, right, to that cave, which, by the way, again, if you've been there, and I encourage you sisters to look it up, you go up this mountain, and once you get to the top, you have to climb down a little bit. Even the climb down is not easy to get into this cave. And the Prophet ﷺ would go and stay in this cave for like 30 days at a time, contemplating before the revelation. And this woman who, at her youngest, from the stories that you hear, was about 30, her oldest was about 40, and she was climbing up this mountain, taking food and supplies to him. So can we say that she was, strong, physically strong? She was physically strong. Alhamdulillah. I love my sisters and their thumbs up. All right. The next one is number 8 is matinul khuluq, of sound character. And I'll go over them again, just so you guys have them, inshallah. I'm sorry, I keep on shifting in my chair. That must be distracting for you guys. Of sound character. Well, do you remember what we said in the beginning her titles are, right? The princess of Quraysh. Do you think at the time that anybody would be called the princess of anything without being of sound character? Again, this was before Islam. People had, people had no problem, calling a spade, right? She was also called the pure one. Before Islam, she was called the pure one, right? Men, remember, were vying to be her husband. So she was absolutely of sound, solid character before her marriage to the Prophet ﷺ. مثقف الفكر, educated, right? Sophisticated, intellectual in thought. Again, this was a very well-known noble woman of Quraysh. Do we think in any way, shape, or form that this woman was not a very intellectual woman? She had to have been of incredible intelligence. Like my sister Salima said, mental fortitude. You have to be smart to live out in the desert and thrive among these men and among these tribes, and to manage a business like that and to protect yourself and maintain your reputation. You have to have some amazing intelligence right there, right? 10, قادرا على الكسب, that you're able to, make your own living. We all know that she was able to do that, right? So she already had 8 of the 10 characteristics, right? And if you guys want, I can go over them real quick again once I'm done with all 10. But we already knew that she had all of those 8 of the 10 characteristics before Islam came. And then what happened, right? The Prophet ﷺ received the message and he ran down to her and he was shivering and he said, cover me, cover me. And he told her what happened. And what did she say to him? Right? More confirmation of the fact that she was such an incredibly intellectual woman. She did 2 things. Number 1, she covered him and she said, listen, you are an incredible person. You are of sound character. Your Lord will not forsake you. Your Lord will not have forsaken you when you have this incredible a character. But on top of that, guess what else she did? She's like, you know what? Let me confirm. And again, this is before Islam even was a concept, right? And there are verses that came later, not in references to her, but just to show how amazing, incredible of a woman she is. There are verses that came later that talk about how فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you're unsure, if you don't know. If you don't know something, ask the people of knowledge. So what did this incredible woman do even before these ayahs were revealed, and even before Islam was even Islam? She said, let's go ask a person of knowledge. And so she took the Prophet ﷺ And she went and she asked her cousin Waraq ibn Nawfal. And Waraq ibn Nawfal was a very religious person. He was a monotheist, right? And she asked him, she said, this is what happened. And he said, this is a sign of prophethood. And if you have the ask of prophethood, if you are asked to carry this message and I'm alive, I will support and follow you. So not only did she calm this man down, and not only did she give him the strength and the courage, but she also said, you know what? I don't know enough about this. I only know what I see. Let's go ask somebody who's more knowledgeable. She supported him in the ways that he needed to be supported at the time. And then when the message came, what did this woman do? What did this woman do? He said, I was asked to carry this message, and she said, I believe, making her what? We talk about Khadija as being the first woman in Islam. Khadija was not the first woman in Islam. Khadija was the first Muslim. Khadija was the first revert. Khadija is the mother of all Muslims. She is the leader, and we are all her followers, because we always talk about her as being the wife of the Prophet and being the first Muslim in Islam, but we rarely ever say she is the first Muslim. She is the first revert. She is the first person to come back to this religion, this instinct, this fitrah of Islam, right? And by the way, by all accounts, Khadija never was a polytheist. She never worshipped multiple gods. That's by all accounts that we know. But even if that were the case, right? The fact that the man that she trusted with her life and with her wealth and with, with her children came to her with a message. And what did she do? She knew who she chose, and she believed him, and she followed him. And what followed after that? We said that Khadija was a very, very wealthy woman. So actually, after they got married, Khadija decided that she had enough of pursuing wealth. She had enough wealth, and she wanted to retire and live a wealthy life. And the Prophet ﷺ was never a material person. So they pretty much retired, right? After that, the Muslims started increasing, mashallah, and the people of Quraysh started being unhappy about it. And then there was this embargo. And they actually decided that they would actually, subhanallah, in this amazing parallel and this heartbreaking parallel to what's happening in Gaza right now, they decided to surround the Muslims. They cut off all the supplies to the Muslims. They prohibited anybody from dealing with the Muslims, doing business with the Muslims, trading with the Muslims, employing the Muslims, and the Muslims only had themselves, right? And what did Khadija do? She gave up anything that she could, all her resources, all her money, trying to buy the supplies that the Muslims needed, okay? And this embargo lasted for a few years. And at the end of the embargo, she started to get sick. She was older at that point. Remember, they were married for 25 years. So let's say even if they got married she was 30 years old, let's say at the youngest end of it, 30 and 25 is 55 years old. When you're living in the desert environment, and again, you don't have the modern medicine and everything that we have now, 55, 60 years old is a long time, mashallah, to live. If we start at the 40 years old that a lot of people know, then she reached 65 years old. So at that time, again, being weak of body and not having the resources and the nourishment that they needed, Khadija started to get sick. And then once the embargo was done, a little while later, Khadija passed away. Now, this woman gave her money for the sake of Islam. But realistically, she also gave her life for the sake of Islam. Because guess what? As a noble woman of Quraysh, she could have always gone back. She could have always renounced the deen. She could have always said, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm an older woman. I need to go live my life. She could have done any of that. Quraysh would have taken her back in a heartbeat. But what did she do? She stuck it out. And she lived for Islam and she died for Islam. Now, remember, we were talking about the 10 characteristics and I left out 2, right? I started at 3. So let me ask you guys this. Characteristic number 1 is Salimul Aqidah. that they are, that a person is sound in their belief. Do we think that Khadija was sound in her belief? There's a sister right in the middle of my screen, and I need to thank her so much. Mashallah, she's like always the first thumb up. Yes, she was sound in her belief, because this is what our religion asks us to do. Our religion asks us to support each other, to take care of each other, and to give whatever we can in taking care of not just ourselves, but our brothers and our sisters in Islam. And she did that, right? And if she didn't have a proper belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in the Prophet ﷺ, she couldn't have done what she did. And the second was sahihul ibadah, right? That a person is correct in their worship. Was she correct in her worship by giving all that she could for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? She was correct in her worship. So let me do these in order now. Okay, so the 10 characteristics that we spoke about that a Muslim should have is, number one, salimul aqidah, which is correct in their belief, right? Number two, sahihul ibadah, which is, or the first one is solid in their belief, right? The second one is sahihul ibadah, correct in their worship. The third is mujahidan li nafsih, so a person strives for themselves. They don't rely on others to get their stuff done. The fourth one is haris ala waqtih, a person is careful with their time, or properly organizes their time. The fifth one is munazzaman fi shu'unih, that a person is organized in their affairs. The sixth one is nafi'an li ghayrih, that they are beneficial for others. The seventh is qawiyul jism, that a person is strong in their body, or physically strong. 8 is matinul khuluq, which is solid in their manners. 9 is muthaqqaful fikr, intellectual. 10 is qadiran ala al-kasb, that a person is able to earn for themselves, okay? So these are the 10 characteristics of a Muslim. Now, why am I bringing this up with Khadija? You guys might be thinking, okay, she's all over the place. Why is she bringing this up? Let me tell you why I'm bringing this up. Because Khadija had all of these characteristics, except for the first two, because Islam hadn't come yet, before she was Muslim, before she was married to the Prophet ﷺ. So what does that tell you? That tells you that this woman was chosen especially and particularly for this man. Now remember, when the Prophet was younger, Jibreel alayhi salam came to him twice, and he went into his heart and he took out, the mudgha, the black clot from his heart, right? And the Prophet alayhi salam, during his lifetime, from when he was young and when he grew up, he never really got in trouble in the way that youth get in trouble, like young men, right? So even when his friends would be like, hey, we're going to go, do this and that, we're going to go meet women, we're going to go, he would say, okay, yeah. And then subhanAllah, he would fall asleep. This is part of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's protection of him, right? So this man who was destined to be a prophet, who was protected from the very beginning, who is pure, who has the greatest of manners, who is trustworthy, who is amazing, who else would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala choose for him to be his first wife? The woman who shows him the path of adulthood and parenthood and marriage and being a spouse, right? It could not have been except somebody who already had the characteristics of exactly the perfect woman, mashallah. She had to have been the perfect woman to marry this perfect man, because any lesser woman could not have carried the weight of being the wife of this man once Prophet had came to him. And I'm sure you guys know so much about the seerah, how hard it was for the Prophet ﷺ, how much he went through when he went to Ta'if, and he had like dirt and stones and thrown at him, and how subhanallah, he was insulted by his own people, had garbage thrown on him. What do you think happened when this man came home at night? And I'm going to ask you something, my sisters, for those of you who are married. How many times does your man come home and he's complaining and upset and work sucks and this person is horrible and this and that? And how many times do you go, oh God, I have my own issues to deal with, right? Listen, we're human. We're not Khadija, right? And we're not married to the Prophet, definitely. But when we look at what this man went through and what she went through as the wife of this man, subhanallah, it shows us that our burdens, even as wives and mothers, are so much smaller, subhanallah, right? She could not have been the wife of this man had she already not been perfected and prepped by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to complete this man. And they absolutely completed each other, right? They absolutely completed each other and perfected each other so that they could carry this message together. He came and he supported her, and he was strong at a time that, you know, she needed the strength to carry on her business and live in a man's world. And then that strength that she was given through leading her business and doing everything that she was doing gave her the strength to then go and be the perfect woman for him. Don't talk to me about Romeo and Juliet. Don't talk to me about like any of these love stories, or I don't know who's been watching what on Netflix. Don't talk to me about any of that. Talk to me about Muhammad and Khadija and the love that they had. And again, Khadija, all on her own as a woman, can be talked about for hours. I am telling you, if any of your sisters are in business, or you know anybody who's like, you know, working on like a thesis for like any business, Khadija is the perfect example to study. On her own, she was a phenomenal woman. But with the Prophet, والسلام, she was a powerhouse. She was a beautiful person. She was the perfect wife. And their love story not only continued for 25 years, but it continued much longer after she had died. The Prophet ﷺ didn't marry for a couple of years until she died. But what's more important than that is that even after he went to Medina and she was buried in Mecca, he would think about her all the time. And when he went to Mecca, or if he saw anybody of her friends, he would like guys, like this is an important one, because I don't know about you, but like I know a lot of spouses who are not crazy about their wives' friends, right? And when he would see her friends after she passed, it would be like the biggest deal. He would go and ask them how they are, how things are happening for them, how things are going on for them, what was going on with their lives. When he had the ability, he would slaughter for them and, you know, serve them and gift them, to the point that Aisha got jealous. And she said to him once, she said, you know, you are like, you keep on talking about this old, you know, you were married to an old woman with red eyes, and you know what, like Allah gave you somebody younger and better. And he got so angry. He got so angry. She said in a narration that she saw the look on his face that she would only see whenever he was getting revelation, right? That like really like focused, like really intense, painful kind of look, because revelation was not easy for him. And he looked at her and he said, Allah did not give me anything better. She believed in me when nobody did, and she carried my children. And he talked about all the good things that this woman did for him in his lifetime, years and years and years after Khadija was gone. And you know what? Aisha wasn't wrong. He did have a younger wife. He had multiple younger wives, and he had wives from all walks of life. And instead of one wife, he had 9 wives, you know, but none compared to Khadija. Again, I want to ask you guys, how amazing was this woman that he kept on thinking about her and continued to love her long after she passed? We see stories like that now. You know, subhanAllah, I was on social media recently, and I was reading this, listening to this sheikh talk about how somebody had called him, and he said, "Ya sheikh, do we have to have a spouse in Jannah? Do we have to have like, you know, the hur, like the you know, the women that were gifted in Jannah, or the hur that were gifted in Jannah?" And the sheikh really wanted to know why. And he was talking about how, subhanAllah, he was talking about his wife, and he was talking about how many days, how many years, months, days, and hours ago his wife had passed, and how she was happiness, and she was good in life, and how she was the blessing in his life, and how she was and how she was. And this was an old man. And he was talking about like how the only thing this man ever wanted in Jannah was this wife. That was the only thing he wanted, subhanAllah. And guys, like, again, I don't know about you, alhamdulillah, I'm happily married, but I can't say my husband's gonna say that. You know, I can say my husband, if I die, my husband won't marry somebody else. My son is passing by and he's like, You know, I can't tell you that my husband wouldn't want to marry somebody else. I can't tell you that my husband would reject a gift of, however many hur he's going to be given in Jannah. This is a gift from Allah. How do I know that, how do any of us know that our spouses would do that, right? Because we talk about Jannah in different terms and, about how the wife in Jannah is more beautiful and the hur are just like things versus, they're not really people. But this man is saying like, well, in advance, like he's asking, Sheikh, can I reject these women? And I don't want anybody but my wife. And we look at it and we're like, oh, and you know what? We forget that like, subhanAllah, like this love existed in our prophet. And wallahi, we look at all these like love stories in history, the fake ones and the real ones, and we forget that we had the real love story in our deen, subhanAllah. Sorry, 1 second. All right, coffee. Okay, so why is Khadija important? Besides the fact that she was the love of our Prophet ﷺ, and we love everybody that he loves. Why is Khadija important? Because the life lessons that we get from Khadija, we need to all return to. Feminism right now is a very controversial word. I was going to say a different word, but let me say controversial, right? We talk about feminism and, you say feminism and so in front of some people they say astaghfirullah feminism. But subhanAllah, if feminism equals, or if feminism is equity, right? Or not equality necessarily, but equity, then Khadija was the first feminist in Islam, right? If feminism means that women get their just dues, that women get what is due to them and their rights as women and mothers, and spouses and partners and daughters and sisters, then Khadija proved that. And Islam gave us that, because not one thing about this woman was ever refuted. Not one thing about this woman was ever stated to be inappropriate, right? Even at the time when hijab came down, women at the time were, they used to wear like maybe a head covering and then keep this area open, and this area would be, very enticing. And then the ruling came down that, they would have to put their khumr and close this area up, right? And some scholars say even lower, but it was mostly this area because this was like enticing, right? And even back then, we have no story about Khadija being one of the women who, for example, had those kinds of characteristics, tried to entice men, tried to, you know what I mean? But most importantly, Khadija showed us that Islam encouraged the empowerment of women. She was already empowered, by the way, before Islam. Right. My sister said Islam came before feminism. Absolutely. But Khadija was a unique type of woman. She was already empowered before Islam. But the most important question we really need to ask ourselves is, did Islam come and tell her you can't do that? Did Islam come and tell her you need to let go of your wealth? Did Islam come and tell her you can't own your own business? Did Islam come and tell her you can't speak for yourself? Did Islam come and tell her you should have never gone and asked for that man yourself? Did Islam come and tell her, you were married before, so you are a, bad sister or a bad woman, right? Did Islam say, oh, marry the unmarried women first before you marry a married woman, right? Did Islam come and say, oh, if you had kids before, you're, shame on you, you're bad, 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 you're, you're, I mean, I could think of many subhanallah words that are used nowadays that I don't even want to dignify, and I don't want to disturb your ears with, but you've all heard it. We've all heard it, right? This woman was married. This woman is divorced. This woman was, insert many derogatory words here, right? Islam never came and said, what Khadija did was wrong. All we talk about is how Khadija, again, was the perfect woman. So, Islam is the purest form of women empowerment in terms of rights. And the biggest example that we have of that is Khadija. By the way, we have many, many examples. right? We have the example of Aisha, who was a female scholar, like I said, who taught men. And we have the example of Rufayda, the first doctor in Islam. And we have examples of women who actually battled alongside the Prophet ﷺ and lost limbs. And inshallah, maybe in the future, other speakers can talk to you guys about those, or maybe inshallah, if I'm invited back in the future, we could do a series about women in Islam. Women in Islam were always powerful and always strong. But Khadija, just like she was the first Muslim and the first revert, she was the first feminist. She was the first powerful female character in Islam. And she is our role model, sister. She is our role model. She is the woman that we all need to be like, because guess what? Like we said, if she weren't perfect, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have never chosen her to be the wife, the first wife of this perfect man that we call our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Women are practiced in the real practice. Women are honored in the real practice of Islam. We are honored, sisters. I'm on social media all the time because of my job. And I see, people saying derogatory remarks about like the hijab, people saying derogatory remarks about the way that we dress and that, we wear long sleeves. This is an honor for us and it's a detriment to them. I don't want you seeing what you see on everybody else. You don't deserve to see me. You don't deserve to see what color my hair is. You don't deserve to see what I look like under this. You don't deserve it. You have not earned that honor. My religion, my Lord, honored me by telling me that you are much more important and the people around you are not deserving to see that. My religion honored me in that it allowed people or forced people to see who I am here and listen to what I'm saying here versus, how long my hair could be, how short my skirt could be, how flirty I could be, right? And Khadija, if she wasn't that kind of solid person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have never allowed the Prophet ﷺ to marry her, right? Khadija was an ideal business owner, which tells me, sisters, that you can be whatever you want to be. And Islam never said you can't be what you want to be. You want to be a stay-at-home mom? Be a stay-at-home mom. That's absolutely fine. My mom, that was her dream. My mom's dream was to grow up and have children. My dream was to grow up. I don't know what my dream was. I think it was to be a doctor at some point, but that didn't pan out. But my dream was to grow up and be beneficial somehow, right? My interests in life are to talk to people, to communicate with people, to be beneficial to people, to help the community, to work with the Muslim community. That is what I'm passionate about. Alhamdulillah, I have kids and I love my kids and I would not trade them for the world. But for me, that's part of my life path. That was never my goal in life. It's not my end goal, right? There are other things I want to achieve for me. And sisters, whether you want to pursue your education or start a business or get a job or stay at home or be pampered, whatever it is that you want to do, Islam never told you no. Islam only told you to do it within the confines of Islam, to live your life Islamically. And Khadija did that. Khadija did that respectfully before she became a Muslim and lived through the rules of Islam after she became a Muslim. And that never stopped her from being a boss lady in so many ways, literally and figuratively, subhanallah. And my last point to you, sisters, is women need to support women. Khadija went to her friend and said, go ask for this man for me. She didn't need a man to go do it. Again, I'm not putting down the value of men in our lives. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put men in our lives for a reason, right? They are our strength. They are our backbone. They are our supporters. They are our protectors. But at the end of the day, when she had no man to go to, that didn't stop her from doing anything. She went to her friend and sent her to the Prophet to find that man that she knew would then help her do all of these things, right? Khadija supported other women when they needed to get married, when they needed to get a leg up on life. She was there for them. She's not, oh, it's not my problem. Let their dad spend on them. No. She supported women. And sisters, we need to support each other for better or for worse. We need to not backbite each other. We need to not talk about each other. We need to not shame each other where we are in our path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as long as we're walking that path. We need to push each other to be better, inshallah, without being judgmental. And sisters, on the other side of it, we need to accept advice. We need to accept nasiha from our sisters who are advising us sincerely without being defensive, without getting upset about it, and knowing that my sisters love me for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to learn all of these lessons from Khadija radiallahu anha. We need to know this woman inside out as a woman and as a Muslim and as the wife of our Prophet ﷺ, not just as the wife of our Prophet ﷺ, even though that is such a valuable title as one of the mothers of the believers. But ultimately, she was her own person before, and that was a reason why Allah chose her for our Prophet. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him. With that being said, my dear sisters, I think we have a few more minutes. I'm just going to open it up to any kind of discussion or questions you may have. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for listening to me rant for a good hour.
Mashallah, mashallah. It was no rant at all. There were so many gems and benefit, mashallah, Sister Lana, in your talk, mashallah. May Allah allow us to embody those 10 characteristics that you mentioned, and may He allow us to have those qualities of support for one another, mashallah. I mean, there were just so many gems. I can't mention them all, but Jazakillah khair. Inshallah, we can take a few questions. I asked that you type them in the chat, inshallah, just to maintain some order, inshallah. So maybe we can start with 2 to 3 questions. We have about 5 minutes left.
Oh, you sisters are so sweet, wallahi. Jazakumullahu khairan. You guys are wallahi so sweet. So I saw a question pass through. So I was trying to keep my eye on the chat when I started. That's why I kept on getting distracted. Thank you for the sisters who said they love my hijab. I actually love my hijab very much too. It actually is. Let me show you guys. It is, I don't know if you can see it. It is
Mashallah,
the Dome of the Rock and some cities of Palestine. And yes, I wear this out all the time. No, I don't care. Alhamdulillah. So jazakumullah khairan for everybody who complimented my hijab. So looking at the questions, jazakallahu khairan, Sister Maria, who actually put down the 10 characteristics. They're the characteristics of a Muslim by Hassan al-Banna. I will see, inshallah, if I can find an English version of it, and I will send it to my beloved sister, and she can share it with everybody, inshallah. I think there was a question, I think I saw it, did Khadija wear hijab? That is a very good question. So I don't think so. I am trying to, I think the verse of hijab was revealed after Khadija died, but I'm actually trying to find out for you guys. So hijab was revealed 627 Hijri, and Khadija passed away. I'm doing my math while I'm talking to you guys. 619. So no, the verse of hijab was not revealed at the time of Khadija. May Allah be pleased with her, but she was very well known to be a very modest woman. I'm trying to scroll and see if there were any questions. Sister Iris said, as a new revert, that was the name of a coworker, and that was the first time you heard about her. Alhamdulillah. I hope that Khadija that you met emulated the Khadija that we just spoke about, inshallah. Some people commented that their love, the Prophet ﷺ, Khadija was so beautiful, mashallah. Yeah, I don't see any more questions here. Did I miss anybody's question? I'm just trying to scroll.
I don't think so.
No, I think we're good. Jazakumullah khairan, everybody. And I hope to see you at a different time, inshallah.
Inshallah. So if anybody wants to, if anybody's in Jersey, in the central Jersey area, go visit.
I'm actually still at
Lana.
There you go.
Mashallah, go visit Lana at the Mass New Jersey Youth Center, inshallah. They have so many great programs going on this Sunday, right? This Sunday, they have their second Fajr at the beach.
Yes.
I attended.
Oh, go ahead.
I attended the last one last year, and it was amazing, mashallah. So definitely check them out. I was gonna share your website.
It's
Uh,
okay, so we're located in North Brunswick, New Jersey. It's called the Mass Youth Center of New Jersey, and we have a lot of programs for kids, for youth, for adults, and yes, Fajr at the Beach, we have it every other Sunday. You guys can follow us on Instagram. I'm looking at all these beautiful messages, mashallah. You can follow us on Instagram. It's at Mass Central NJ, and that's where we update the most. And then Alejandra put the website. It's Mass. Actually, it's easier. It's Mass MASCNJ.org or MassCentralJersey.org. And I hope that we see you guys at some future events, inshallah. Oh, somebody came to our carnival. How was it? Did you like it?
My daughter loved it. She had a awesome time.
Oh, alhamdulillah, even though it was a hot day, subhanallah. That was such a
I was
hot
very
day.
hot.
We tried with so many water rides and everything, but alhamdulillah, I'm so glad that you came. Inshallah,
Yes,
next time you're here, I look forward to meeting you in person.
absolutely. Because I'm right here in Somerville, so I'm not far.
Oh, okay. So inshallah, we need to meet up.
Absolutely.
Inshallah.
Mashallah, mashallah. I wanted to share on July 13th, inshallah. We have a sisters picnic and hike planned, inshallah, in upstate New York. If you're in Bronx, in the Queens area, we have 2 buses heading out from there. I'm trying to see if I can share the flyer, inshallah. We did record this, mashallah, so we will be sharing it out in our WhatsApp chats. If you're not part of our WhatsApp chats and you'd like to receive the recording, inshallah, you can email us at revertsreconnect@massnewyork.org. Anybody else before we close out, inshallah? Sister Lana, you want to close us out?
Yes, inshallah.
Jazakillah khair, Allah bless you, and make this extremely heavy on your scale of good deeds. Ameen.
Ameen. Jazakillahu khairan. Jazakumullahu khairan, my sisters. اللهم صل على محمد في الأولين وصل عليه في الآخرين وصل عليه في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين. Oh Allah, we ask you to bless our gathering. Ya Allah, we ask us to always increase us in beneficial knowledge and to make us able to pass it on. Oh Allah, we ask you to make us beneficial to our brothers and sisters in Islam, both locally and abroad. Oh Allah, we ask you to keep us on the straight path and make us firm in our belief and always turn our hearts towards you and not against you, Allah. Ya Allah. We ask you, Allah, to grant our brothers and our sisters in Gaza and in Palestine and in anywhere where there's oppression against Muslims relief. We ask you, Allah, to show us a day that Muslims are free and living in a safe world, Ya Allah. We ask you, Allah, that you grant us all Jannah and that we be gathered, inshallah, in Jannah where there will be no sorrow and no fear. We ask you, Allah, that you reward our teachers and those who have taken the time to pass their knowledge to us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to help them benefit the ummah. And the last of our du'as is Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.
Jazakillah khair. Allah bless you. Allah grant you all peace and comfort. Ameen, ameen, ameen to your dua. Inshallah, our next lecture series, inshallah, will be in August. I believe it's August 6th, inshallah, yes. So look out for that flyer. Write it in your calendar so you don't forget. It's this same link and same time, 7 o'clock, inshallah. Allah bless you all. Jazakillah khair, Sister Lana. So I'm sending you a strong hug. Inshallah, I'll see you soon.
Assalamu alaikum, my dear sister.
Alaikum salam.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi.
I'm sorry, sisters. I'm not real techie and I mess up with the Zoom. Please forgive me.
No worries, you're good, sis. Allah bless you.
Allah bless you.